All right. I never know with Restream how long to wait before we're live. So, but I think we should be good now. Hey, everybody. Good evening. I am back, baby. I'm back.
It's the long lost freedom, bro.
I was lost in the wilderness, but now I am found, and excited to be back with my co-host Dustin Hurst, our other Freedom Bro, and we've got a jam-packed show tonight and a very exciting show that I can't wait to get to. I don't know. Well, you know what I'm excited for because we're talking guns tonight, and nothing beats talking guns. So, and then we're going to get what's that?
Sure. There are a few things. I can think of at least two things: funeral potatoes, and something we can't talk about on a family-friendly channel. That's terrible.
All right, yeah, that's terrible. All right. With that, let's roll the stinger, baby. I don't know how many shows we're going to get through before I'm just not smiling ear to ear listening to that. It's freaking awesome.
It like I said, it's a lot, and it's a lot in such a good way. It's oh man. Oh, Greg, how you been?
Good, brother. How about you, man? It's lawsuits, just fun times, good times. I love it. It's good stuff.
I can't for those who don't know, I can't go into too much detail, but if I can get my camera to zoom or to focus. Greg and I are being sued because of some articles that we wrote. They were completely honest. I'm not going to go into them because I don't want this show to become part of the discovery process. But it's a sham. It's a complete sham. Yeah. And we will do it. I think, Greg, correct me if I'm wrong. I think we will do a show on the whole stupid lawsuit once it's done and we've won the thing and it's behind us. Yeah. Because we get to dunk on the guy who's suing us because he's a freaking moron. So, but for right now, know that Greg and I are going through it because of some guy who got his feelings hurt on the internet.
Pretty much, yeah. That's the short and easy answer. So yeah, absolutely. Oh shoot.
So, well. Before we get to your favorite topic, I just want to give a quick preview. Matt Jensen, who, like, if you think of one Republican in Idaho, like you think the Republican Party, who's the most Republican person in the entire state? Matt Jensen is it. Like, the guy is a nerd. I love him. He's a nerd. He's going to be joining us later tonight to talk about the GOP's summer meetings, which were controversial because the establishment wanted us to think they were controversial for no other reason. And Matt Jensen was there. He's going to tell us what happened. Brian Almon was not there, but he kind of was paying attention, and I really like Brian. And I figure of anybody not named Greg and Dustin, he's the one person that's been mentioned on the podcast most, so we should probably just have him on at some point. So Matt Jensen and Brian Almon will be joining us in a little bit, but first let's give Greg his thing. Let's do it.
This is it. I'm just gonna bail after this segment, dude. I'm out.
I wouldn't be surprised after the last 2 weeks. Okay, let's be real about this.
I know, dang family stuff, and bad internet connections. But anyway, all that being said, for those that don't know, we had a massive Supreme Court case, Idaho Supreme Court case, I should clarify, that just happened last week, which kind of threw all of us off guard. We knew that there's always a gamble when you go to the courts. You know this, Dustin, and you never know how it's going to go. But it ended up going 5-0 against gun owners, which was kind of shocking that not one of the Supreme Court justices sided with us. And I mean, there's some silver lining in all of this. Of course, we had plans to figure out where these people stood on the Second Amendment because it's important. But with all that said, the case was Scott Herndon, who is now a state senator. At the time, he was not a state senator. Went to a park, got denied entry because he was open carrying at a public park. And that was all the way back in, I think, 2019. That's how long this has taken to get to this point. But we've got a lot of work to do now as gun owners. So before I get too deep into that, though, I want to bring Senator Herndon on to talk about this case and that beard. That background, beard. The background, the beard. I mean, it's all good.
Yeah, there you go. Hey, I'm up in the mountains. Got a beautiful view of the Ponderay River not too far from
here. Hey, that's fantastic. So you're a little glitchy, but your audio's come through okay. So I think we'll just roll with it and go. But So Scott, it's ironically, we haven't had much time to sit and talk about everything that happened from that case and kind of your initial thoughts on it. But now that you've had some time to stew over what happened, and actually maybe before you get into that, maybe give everybody a brief rundown of a little bit more details of the case than I gave, and then your reaction to it.
Okay, sure. The brief rundown is way back in 2019, August to be specific. We had the festival at Sandpoint. Sandpoint's a beautiful town. Every year they have a music concert series. It's 4 nights a week for 2 weeks. And I knew back then that they were going to be enforcing a firearm ban at the concert. It's held at War Memorial Field. It's a Sandpoint City Park, funded by taxpayers. Normally I can go there on any given day with my firearm, no problem. Yeah. But they said they were going to be wanding for the concert. There was actually a good concert I wanted to go to, so I actually went with a friend of mine, and we did both carry our firearm. And of course, part of it is we did want to see, were they really going to enforce the firearm ban? They've been doing this concert series for decades, and they never enforced a firearm ban, so this was unusual. And we went, and we were stopped at the gate back in August of 2019. And I actually ended up talking to the city attorney, who happened to be there at the gate at the same time. And he said, yeah, if you enter the park during the concert, if you insist on entering, we're going to have you trespass, which means you're going to get a misdemeanor trespass citation. So they only gave us one option, and that's to take your gun back to your car, secure it, or get your money back. Those were our 2 options. And so we got our money back, and then we ended up filing a lawsuit months later. It was a convoluted process.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the background of it.
Yeah.
And last week we got some clarity, and we can get into a lot of detail about what my reaction was to that.
Yeah. Well, and I guess so for people that don't know, and I guess we should set this up with the state law, which the Idaho Supreme Court didn't even mention in their opinion, which was kind of weird. But the state has a firearm preemption law. Most states do. And that's where I think this issue is really important, because while the opinion only impacts us directly, the gun control advocates in other states are going to look at what happened and what came out of this and go, okay, Idaho's got a giant loophole to create gun-free zones. Now we can do the same thing, and we'll just go to court. And if the conservative justices of the Idaho Supreme Court screwed gun owners over, then certainly they could do that in Wisconsin or Ohio or Pennsylvania or somewhere else with a firearm preemption law. But the whole purpose of the firearm preemption law is so that when a gun owner is traveling from city to county to city to county throughout the state, you don't have to wonder whether or not you can get out of your car and carry in a public park or carry on the streets of Boise. Okay, the state said cities and counties, you're not allowed to regulate firearms. And so our contention before the court was, well, if the cities and counties don't have that power, they can't possibly give that power to someone else, some private organization, to then ban guns on public streets and public parks and all that kind of stuff. And the Supreme Court basically said, yeah, they can. We're going to go ahead and say that that's okay. And that's the opinion that came down. And, you know, gun owners have a really big problem right now that's got to be fixed.
It's pretty outlandish, because what they essentially said is, and I'm going to use an example in Sandpoint, right downtown. So War Memorial Field, where we tried to enter the concert, is in the city of Sandpoint. But I'll use an example of a downtown park called Farman Park. It's actually right downtown in the city, surrounded by public streets. It's this little tiny sliver of a park. And every weekend on Saturday, the farmers market, it's an association, a nonprofit association, just like what happened with the concert series. That's run by a nonprofit company called the Festival at Sandpoint. And every weekend, the farmers market uses the Farman Park grounds for 4 hours to put on their farmers market. And they also do it every Wednesday night. Okay. Well, as it turns out, Sandpoint has leased the park to the farmers market, just like they claim that they leased War Memorial Field to the festival at Sandpoint, even though the lease is only for a few hours. And the Supreme Court of the state of Idaho literally said that if you lease it for a few hours, then that imparts complete private property ownership to those nonprofit corporations during the term of the lease. In technical legal terms, that's called an estate interest. If we were in Georgia, we'd be way better off because the Georgia Supreme Court had the exact same type of case. In that case, with the Atlanta Botanical Garden, it didn't work out for the gun owner because the Atlanta Botanical Garden truly did have an estate interest because they have a 99-year lease. That's one thing. But this is really a special event being held at the park. And the Supreme Court says they get full private property access over taxpayer-funded property during a very short-term lease during a special event.
Yeah, I can't believe it. So, Dustin, let me bring you into this so you don't get bored and fall asleep waiting for me and Scott to keep going back and forth. Let me ask you, Dustin, you and I, we reserve a park for the Freedom Bros podcast live from Ann Morrison Park, right? And we reserve the whole park for ourselves for 12 hours. But as a means of getting in, we say, let's see, Asians aren't allowed, women aren't allowed, nobody from the LGBT spectrum is allowed. Is that going to hold up in any court in the state of Idaho?
Oh, it won't. It won't. But we can discriminate against gun owners who are afraid of, not afraid of, but who don't want to be sitting ducks in a gun-free zone, which is not actually a gun-free zone. We all know that.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. I mean, Scott, I think you would probably agree. There is no way any of that would hold up in a court. They'd be like, well, you're discriminating. And I'm like, well, at least one of these things is in the Constitution, but, and I'm not even saying that I would agree with the courts, doing. So the problem is we now have a situation where there's a giant loophole, and that Sandpoint mayor, the Boise mayor, they're all going, okay, now what can we do to screw over gun owners? There is no preemption law, because if somebody calls you up, Scott, and says, hey, can I go down? There's this event going down at this park. Can I go down there and carry my gun? You can't tell them yes now. You have to say, I don't know, go contact the city and see if they leased it out to the thing. And then if they did properly lease it, did they ban firearms? I mean, you would have to do that for every event. And that's exactly what preemption was designed to eliminate.
Well, I'm even going to step in and say, you just said, did they properly lease it? To be honest with you, I don't even think the Supreme Court cared whether it was proper or not. I mean, literally, if you write a contract, this is what they said. If you write a contract and you call it a lease, then it's a lease. If you call a duck, then it's a duck. Doesn't matter whether it is a duck or not. Now, if you want to talk about other rights, let's go to the First Amendment. There was a case out of Portland, Oregon, where a group rented a city park just like this, and a preacher went down to preach the gospel, the Christian gospel, at the city park during the event. And they kicked him out, and he sued in federal court, and the Ninth Circuit took it up. And the Ninth Circuit said, no, sorry, the quintessential public forum, which is a city park, never changes no matter who leases it. And just because someone leased it for a wedding event, which was the case in that case, does not mean that they can keep the preacher out of the park. He always has his First Amendment rights. So that was a Ninth Circuit court case in federal court.
Wow,
but you get on the First Amendment. So this was exactly the same thing, only the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment, which, to be honest, is even more clear than the First Amendment.
Right.
It's the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It's absolute. Yet our Supreme Court didn't care about, you mentioned preemption law. They didn't even talk about it in their opinion.
Yeah.
Never mentioned it. And never talked about any other rights, but they certainly bagged on the Second Amendment in this case.
Yeah, and people have asked us, why did you even go to the Idaho Supreme Court, knowing there's a gamble there. I mean, we did know that there was a gamble, but between the Georgia case and that Oregon case, we were kind of like, we feel pretty confident. I mean, there's just no way. And then it came down 5-0, and we were like, what the hell happened here? How is this possible that, it's, again, this has been a long-standing problem for gun owners, and I had some hope that it wouldn't be a problem in Idaho, but gun owners and discriminating against gun owners has been okay in courts all across the country, including the U.S. Supreme Court, for a really long time. It's the one issue they don't want to really tackle and go, hey, shall not be infringed really means that. They just don't want to deal with it. But I was still a little shocked at the 5-0. I thought maybe it would be 3-2, but 5-0 was pretty shocking. And guess what? All of those guys are elected. They're all elected officials. In fact, one of them is up for re-election next year. So Idahoans will get to have a say if he gets a challenger.
Yeah, and to be fair, people asked us, why did we go to court? That's exactly what the court system is for.
Yeah.
We literally availed ourselves of exactly what the judiciary is all about. We said, here's what the law says, court, and this set of circumstances is our interpretation of what the law says accurate. And what the court has basically come back and now told us is they have said that the law is presently inadequate. The law will not protect gun owners on public property, absolutely. And so what that means now, so after we went through all that expense and all that time, and now we have that clarity from the Idaho Supreme Court, we know that we are at a dead end with the judiciary in Idaho. And so what we have to do now is we have to go back to the legislature and we need to fix it. So now we know that Idaho code is inadequate. Preemption is useless for these sets of circumstances. And we're going to have to come up with the remedy. And we only have to get 36 House members, 18 Senate members, and the governor to all agree on a remedy.
Yeah.
No, super simple,
I
right?
say that with a straight
super
face.
simple. Yeah, I was gonna say that's really easy to get that done.
So talking about this fix, I guess Dustin and Scott, the Idaho Second Amendment Alliance, and obviously I'm, that's the organization that I run. We are calling for a special session right now because of all the summer events that are taking, summer and fall events that are, there's rodeos and county fairs and just everything happens during the summertime. Like, had this opinion come out in October, we'd be like, okay, whatever. Just, there might be some events, but let's just ride it out until January and give it our best shot. What are both of your guys' thoughts on doing a special session right now to try and address this before we could? Now look, we could go through the whole summer and maybe nothing happens, right? But to me, there's a higher probability of of problems occurring as a result of this that could potentially be really problematic. People could start getting arrested. Gun owners think that, hey, the firearm preemption law exists. What are you doing? They didn't know about our case. Maybe they didn't hear about it. So what are your guys' thoughts on a special session to cover this? And I believe there's some other issues coming down the pike too.
Well, I can tell you there's only two ways that a special session is going to happen. Number one, the governor can call the special session. Now, I've heard rumors that someone's been asking the governor for a special session on a totally different topic before this came up.
Correct.
So, and I actually think it would be very unlikely, except for something that the governor really cares about, for him to call a special session.
So what are you saying, Scott? Are you saying he doesn't care about the Second Amendment? I don't know.
Pretty sure I've seen campaign videos of him holding some kind of a firearm, but
it's
I've
for
never
hunting.
seen him like.
It's for hunting. Okay. John Rusci all over again. Goodness gracious.
Yeah.
I think we all know that this is not on the governor's priority list. He's never been a gun guy. He may have cast some of the correct votes when he was in the legislature.
Sure.
Maybe, I don't know his record, but he's not a gun guy. He doesn't give a crap. So it's not going to happen. Unfortunately, I think you're right, probably, Greg, to call for one. It's not going to happen. But maybe if you ran an initiative to raise taxes and increase government spending, and then somehow added in this preemption bill into your into that big package, you could get the governor to actually care about your issue.
Yeah.
Is that something you can do?
Oh gosh, yeah. Well, and to be honest, he hasn't even put out a statement, right? I don't even know if any legislators have put out statements on this, other than maybe the Democrats who are all happy about it.
I did.
And Scott,
did you really?
Let me rephrase. Other than
did
Scott,
it have any 4-letter words in it?
Oh no, guns, Guns. I had guns in there.
So I would love to see the legislators, if calling for it, and then also I think really, from what I'm hearing, people aren't understanding how big of a problem this is, and how big, or at least especially a potential problem this could create. And that if you're in these other states, you might want to start rethinking how your preemption law is written, because if the Idaho Supreme Court is unanimously going to throw it out, then the rest of the states are screwed if your preemption law looks anything like ours.
Yeah, so let's talk about the second way a special session could happen. So fortunately, after the November general election, for the first time, we put into the Idaho Constitution the ability of the legislature to call its own special session, which God forbid, I can't believe we went that long without having that ability. I mean, the legislature is it's its own branch of government, and it is the one that writes the laws, and it was never able to, 9 months out of the year, it's out of business. But now we have the ability that if 60% of senators and 60% of House members call for a special session, and all they have to do is say, here's what we want a session about, and they specify the topic, and 15 days later, we've got a session. And so gun owners have been contacting us. So I have gotten actually quite a few emails. It's really good. I have to go count them up, but it's dozens at this point. And I can tell you that the Idaho Freedom Caucus that I'm a member of, there are, I think, 16 senators and House members. We have 10 senators, 6 or 7 House members that are members of the Idaho Freedom Caucus, and we're talking about it. So I bet you there's some other legislators that are also considering it. Now,
sure.
Whether we could get 60%, because that's 21 senators, and they would have to see the urgency that we've got to get down to Boise and fix this problem right away. And I don't know that they're going to see the urgency, but to put some bones on this, look, if your city, just on the 4th of July, city rents a parade route to the Lions Club in Sandpoint, and the Lions Club could say, hey, no carrying firearms at the Lions Club parade in Sandpoint. And get all the people to agree to it. And all of a sudden you have a gun-free zone on all of your city streets in downtown. And Greg, I think you know of a situation like that, don't you?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's where for me, it's not just that you're curtailing gun owners' rights. If they create a gun-free zone, which, I would feel fairly confident that a lot of gun owners would just ignore. But at the same time, you never know. And if a gun owner leaves his gun at home and he ends up being the one shot because, hey, it was a gun-free zone, and God forbid there's some horrible, shooting at one of these events and they die. Yeah, I don't want to see somebody get hurt or killed as a result of a gun-free zone, which is where these people love to target, right? That's why when the city of Boise, when the Boise people that are putting on the Boise parade for Independence Day, somebody had said, "Hey, no open carry of firearms. No, don't show your guns." I was like, "What are you doing?" This is literally the people walking down the middle of 2 fire zones. This is the stupidest advice I've ever seen. I don't think they're going to target the parade float with like 50 guns on it. You know what I mean? It's just it's those types of situations where if it doesn't happen, thank God, right? If it does happen, then everybody's looking at the Idaho Supreme Court. Everybody's looking at the city. Everybody's looking at the legislators, the governor. Why the hell didn't you solve this problem right away when the Idaho Supreme Court did it? Right? That's the situation, the worst case scenario we don't want to see our state in.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting observation about the state of Idaho right now, because, and you and I, Greg, have remarked on this numerous times. Everyone thinks that because our legislature is like 85% Republican, that we are this bastion of conservatism. Well, if that's true, then we'll have a special session within a week or two.
Right.
But it's not true, is it? Is it, Scott? Is it true that we are the bastion of conservatism?
It is not. It's like pulling an arm and a leg to get the legislature to do anything conservative. I mean, I'm just going to use one example. We did 150 budgets in the Senate this past session, and the Senate didn't kill a single budget. So you're telling me that out of all the senators in a supposedly conservative state, that's 82% Republican. Okay, here you go.
Wait a second. Hang on. I know what happened. You were lulled to sleep by somebody reading freaking Daniel Tiger on the freaking floor of the Senate, shilling for the public television budget, which public television is I hate to say it this way, but it's communist propaganda at this point. Like, they're talking about pronouns and redistribution of wealth. And we're reading freaking Daniel Tiger on the floor of the Senate. You were all asleep after that, I think.
Oh, gosh.
It was Senator Ben Adams definitely had a way to lull you into complacency while he was doing that. I can tell you that much.
Roar.
Oh, my gosh. But I don't know. I mean, Scott and Dustin, I guess if the special session doesn't end up happening, which I think it should, I would still like to see where are because come next year, I don't know, January, sometime February, the war drums start beating. I'm pro Second Amendment. Dude, there has not been a better time that I have been doing politics in Idaho than a response to what the Idaho Supreme Court just did. I'm pro Second. I'm going to fight for your gun rights. And if you're a legislator and you're not on your social media and your email saying, hey, this is not right, maybe we'll go fix this in January. At least say something, or don't. And I'll happily let your constituents know what you did or did not do when the Supreme Court gutted our Second Amendment. So,
yeah.
Yeah, there are some problems with guns that are potential problems, but this is actually a real and present problem. So I think you are going to see, and I'll put out the word, and we're going to actually try to muster up some interest in a special session. But if it does take until January, and so I would encourage gun owners, definitely contact your legislator, do that and ask for it. But this is a real problem that we need to solve the next session. We'll land on day one with legislation to fix this problem. And this is one that's going to put our legislators to the test. Are they really for the Second Amendment, or are they not? We're going to find out. It's a real problem. Preemption is a real thing. The legislature should control the field of firearm carry because gun owners should be able to go throughout the state with a uniform set of laws and no surprises for gun owners. And so we need to fix it. Let's see if we can do it.
Scott, first of all, thank you for your work on this. It is a big issue. We know that gun-free zones are leaving people exposed and vulnerable to this sort of violence. You know what I would love to see, and I don't know how this works. I don't know how you guys do this, but I want to see a very public letter saying we want the special session, and I want to know who signs that letter. I want to know who puts their freaking name on the line, because now is not a time for cowardice. It's just not. We have anti-gun people all over the place. We have some anti-gun Republicans. Red flag Rod, where you at, buddy? I want to know. I don't want, like Greg said, next year I'm going to beat that chest. I'm going to have my 12 gauge shotgun that's very clean and my perfectly manicured cowboy hat. And I'm going to tell you I like guns, but are you willing to actually put your name on the line when it matters? Because that crap doesn't matter. This matters. Is there a way that we can get people to actually put their name on an official document or request or whatever? Like, how does that work?
Yeah. Okay. So that's a great idea. And honestly, it does work when people put pressure and make an ask of your legislator. So I'll tell you what I'll do. I will start a letter, and I guarantee I know 16 people who will sign it right away, and we'll get all their signatures put on it. I'll put it up on my Twitter. I'll put it up on my Facebook page, and then Twitter handles Herndon for Idaho. I'll do that before July 4th. So I'll do it. In fact, maybe I'll drop the letter on Monday, July 3rd. So it'll be there. Let's go ahead and spread it on social media. And then you guys and me can ask all of the gun owners in Idaho to send this letter to their legislator and say, will you sign on to this letter that we need to remedy this problem? So let's go ahead and just do that.
I love it. It's time. It's time to stand up. It's not time for campaign rhetoric. It's not time for BS. Put your name on the line. Put your name on the line. That's it.
In this state, this is it. Like, I don't know. You're not going to get a better opportunity to show, oh crap. Okay. Yeah, I really am for the second. Like, this is your time. That's now. No cowardice, because gun owners are pissed. Like, they are really mad and just stunned at what has happened. And they're tired of being treated like crap. And all these people that came here from California, Washington, Oregon, and everywhere else thought they came to a state where the Second Amendment was protected, not only in law, but in the courts. And clearly we have all been wrong, because the courts just took it all down. Okay. That wall is gone, and it's time to put it back. So
very good.
Yeah. All right. And for those that I figured something new out here, Dustin. If you guys want updates, for at least from the Idaho Second Amendment Alliance on what we're doing, I'm going to put a QR code that you can make and restream.
Oh, that's fancy.
If you scan that, it'll go to our Rumble channel where you can get all the video updates I've been putting out. I'll be talking to Scott too from an ISA perspective here shortly, but yeah, we're we're working hard on this, Scott, and I appreciate that. Let's get the legislation written. Let's get it fixed. We need the legislation now, right? We got to have the wording now in case that special session does come. We want to be ready to go. It's time to hit back. So,
yep, that's the other thing we'll be doing is getting that legislation ready. And I know what you guys have coming up, by the way. I know the rest of the show you're going to go and talk about what happened in Chalice at the Idaho Republican Party.
Yeah, boy.
And I was there. I'm a member of the Idaho State Central Committee. We did some great stuff. So I know the rest of your show is going to cover some really good stuff.
It's going to be
Republicans
lit.
actually going to get conservative? That's the question. And I can tell you what, we made a statement about that last weekend in Chalice.
It was lit. I can't wait to get to it. I'm sorry you won't be there for it, but like it's the rest of the show is going to be lit.
Yep.
We'll have you on another time, Scott, for sure. So,
all right, sounds great, guys.
All right, sir. Thanks. Take care. All right,
that's a good one. I love that
I'm
guy.
All fired up now.
Yeah. Here's the thing: it's like a lot of politics is the devil's in the details, and you think this isn't a big deal. It's a big deal. It's a big deal because you think this is where we're talking about mass shootings, right? To have a mass shooting, you have to have two things. Number one, a shooting, and number two, a mass. We're talking about a mass of people.
Yeah.
This is protecting the mass.
Yeah. And all summer long, we have a ton of masses of people meeting for all sorts of things. And it won't take, you may not see it in a lot of the conservative counties, right? I expect that those county commissioners and those events are probably going to just run everything how they've always ran it and letting people protect them. But we're going to be watching Ada County closely, Sandpoint, all up in Blaine County, all that stuff, really close for what's happening. So, all right. Do you want to do the lead in for this next segment?
Man. We've got two huge nerds coming on. They're okay with me saying that, I think. Okay. The Republican Party in Idaho is changing, and I think it's for the better. We have seen at the meeting, what was it, last summer, the Republicans absolutely gave the establishment their marching orders. They said, "Hey, Luna, see you later." 3 out of the 4 officers elected are good conservatives. Daniel Silver, maybe not so much. I don't know, but basically, the establishment. My takeaway was the establishment is on their way out. They've got their walking orders, marching orders, whatever. But is that still the case? Well, let's find out. Brian Almon was not at the GOP summer meetings, but he was watching things closely and talking to people. And Matt Jensen, who is Mr. Republican in Idaho, like the biggest Republican that I can think of, was there. And I want to get their takes on what happened, what it means, what the state of the party is, and where the party is going from here. So let's bring on Brian Almon and Matt Jensen.
How dare you? You're a libertarian. I'm a Constitution Party guy. We have no right to talk about this.
Don't get Brian started. Don't get Brian started. Like he will. Oh man,
that's all right. I have the mute button. So tread how you want there, Brian.
What, are you eating an orange? What are you doing?
Well, he doesn't have his orange jacket on, so apparently he has to eat an orange instead.
Bandage. Long story.
Oh man, it's good to have two guests. This is different. Brian and Brian and Matthew, thank you for coming on the show. How are you guys doing tonight?
A lot better after a cut up from sleep. Getting to Chalice was a bit of a thing, and there was a stopover, and I didn't get any sleep in the stopover, and I only got about 5 hours total of sleep in Chalice, and so I'm still working off that sleep debt.
Did you? I gotta ask because I'm your Facebook friend, and I watched your travel. Did you camp out?
Yeah. We camped out in Arco on the way because it was going to be a lot easier if we didn't travel all the way up Friday morning, and it turned out for good reason. A lot of I wouldn't have known that there were so many conservatives on the ground had I just rushed into the meeting straight off the car.
Very good. Brian Almon is the communication director for IFF, Idaho Freedom Foundation. He's been a gadfly is not the right word. It is the right word, but it's not. It's not as respectful as I should be. He's an
engaged political activist.
There we go. But that doesn't quite capture because you comment on things and you offer your social commentary. I don't know. A pundit. I don't know. We'll go with that. Brian, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing all right. It's good to finally be here.
Like I said, you besides me and Greg, you are the most mentioned person on Freedom Bros podcast. So we thought we might as well just have you on and have some fun. So okay, so
Matthew's
I
got
did
the
not
orange
know
jacket on, so now we're ready, dude.
what the hell is going on.
Normally,
Normally,
it's not the orange one. The orange one is in storage, but
normally, Matthew, when you go to something, you put your clothes on before you go to the thing. Like this is adulting 101, but you know, boo.
I have responsibilities at right around this time of day, and so it's actually kind of difficult.
Responsibilities at 9 o'clock at night.
Oh boy.
Oh man, this is gonna be lit. Okay, Matt, tell me, there was a lot that happened at the GOP summer meetings. Now, first of all, let's do this. Tell us, for people who aren't necessarily well versed in party infrastructure, tell us, why do you have summer meetings, and then tell us 3 of the biggest highlights of this year's summer meetings and your takeaways from those 3 things that happened.
Cut out a little bit there.
Yes, you are, I think. Okay, give us 3 highlights of the summer meeting and what they mean for the GOP.
Well, the first highlight was after I'd been there for a few hours down and saw the beginning of the executive committee meeting, and I saw one of the world's greatest people, Tracy Wasden, immediately the roll call. Like, what? Second highlight is Edgar Miller misbehaved before the rules committee. Just act like his petulant self when he's not getting his way. I'm sure you've been in the room when that's happened. And
wait a second. I'm not talking about. Hang on. I'm not talking about personal grudges, because we all enjoy those things, and we can get to that. What I'm talking about is you guys voted on some really interesting stuff. I have plenty of personal grudges that I don't necessarily bring to the show. Yeah. Tell me about what you actually did, not the beefs you have, because I have a few that I could air, but I won't. Anything?
Is he cutting out or what?
I don't know. All right, let's do this. Turn him off for a minute. Let's talk to Brian. Goodness gracious. Brian, you weren't there, but you were paying attention. You're plugged into this space. Can you give us the 3 highlights and not personal grudges of the summer meetings and what it means for the party?
I'll do my best. It's actually funny that I wasn't there because obviously my wife and I, we just had our baby about 2 weeks ago. So he was
named Donald Trump Almon. Awesome. It's the weirdest baby name, Donald Trump Almon. Now, I don't know how you do that, but
the funny thing is we didn't name him after Donald Trump. However, he was born on Trump's birthday, so there's that.
Of course he was.
Yeah.
But 2 years ago, I was just getting involved in conservative politics. I didn't even know what the summer meeting was or who was there or what they were doing. And now here I am 2 years later, and I'm staying home with my family, but I'm so yearning to be there that I am hitting up every single person who's there to get a play-by-play.
No, nobody wants to yearn to be at the GOP meeting, man. That's jeez.
I find this sort of thing enjoyable, just getting out there and doing politics and the strategy and the tactics and the interpersonal relations. But you asked for 3 highlights. So, well, they did something about the presidential primary. Secretary of State Phil McRae pushed a bill to move the presidential primary from March to May, so it stacks with the other primaries so that they don't have to do 2 separate primaries in presidential election year. But they screwed up a little bit, and they eliminated the one without creating the other. So what the party's done is they've established a caucus for next March. So the Democrats, Constitution, Libertarian, they can do whatever they want, I guess. But the Republicans, assuming there's no special session to fix it, they're going to have a presidential nominating caucus on March 2nd next year, which should be fun. People will get together with their districts and decide who's their presidential nominee, and those results will be transmitted to the state. They'll do some counting, I guess, and Idaho will, allocate its delegates.
Now, so hang on 1 second. This was kind of a mess. It was a tweet of mine that started this whole thing. Nobody knows that, but a tweet of mine started all of this. But the end result is actually pretty good because a caucus, first of all, it's before Super Tuesday, so theoretically presidential candidates will come to Idaho, pretend they care about us for 30 minutes, ask us for our money, and then leave and never think about us again. So that's the thing. But the other positive is that typically people who attend caucuses are very conservative, right? They're engaged, they know what they're talking about. So is it possible that this leads to a more conservative presidential candidate?
It's possible. I mean, you and I can talk about the presidential nomination, at some point.
No, we can't.
I think it's, there's not much to change. It will be what it will be. But this gives, the people of Idaho at least a chance to take part. And generally it's going to be the people who are more engaged who show up at caucuses, because it's not like voting where you can just drop something in the mailbox or, swing by the fire station on your way home from work. You actually have to go and spend several hours, meeting with your neighbors and discussing it. And, for people like me, that sounds fun. For some people, that does not sound fun. So it's going to attract the people who are more politically engaged. And will that change the results? I really don't know.
Interesting. Okay, sorry to interrupt. The other two highlights of summer meetings.
Let's see. I would say the second biggest thing was the one that attracted the most attention, and that was a rule that took voting power from 3 private clubs off of the state executive board. And
that
honestly,
was super controversial.
It shouldn't have been such a big deal, because the state party executive board, it's not like they're up there making rules and sending down orders to the rest of the party on high. It's not, they're not at the top of the organizational chart. They're just there to basically facilitate things that the state central committee approves, handle things in between meetings, and occasionally, if there's a disagreement with something that the chair rules, then the entire executive board, except for the chair, becomes the judicial committee, which determines what are the rules here. But the way that the Idaho Federation of Republican Women and the Idaho Young Republicans were preaching it in the last 6 months, we're basically going to be banning women and young people from the party, and that's obviously not what happened.
It was interesting because, and I saw they held a disproportionate amount of power for people who were unelected, right? Mm-hmm. They had 5% or 10% of the membership or something, and then 18% of the voting right. It was not that, but it was okay, maybe this should be cleaned up. Is somebody eating freaking Rice Krispies on the show?
No, it's Matthew's feed. Matthew, your feed. Every time we try to bring you back on, there's the freaking aliens that are visiting our planet are trying to chime in or something.
It was okay, but
anyway,
but basically, it's this controversy was what the media wanted it to be, which was, these Republican knuckle dragging morons are simply just canceling women again because they want us to be the Handmaid's Tale. And it's weird because normally Republicans hate the media because they understand what happened. But people like my brother and Tracy Wasden completely fed into that narrative that, these totalitarian Dorothy Moon, IFF loving Republicans hate women. They want the Handmaid's Tale. And they completely bought into it. It's insane. But my sense is, Brian, those people have very little power in the party anymore. Is that your takeaway?
I would guess so. I mean, it is kind of an odd narrative to push that Dorothy Moon hates women, but I mean, you work with what you've got, I guess.
Oh, but she's only doing what Wayne Hoffman and Brent Regan tell her to do. Yeah, if you know Dorothy Moon, you know that ain't happening.
Yeah,
that's not a thing.
No.
That's not. Dorothy does what Dorothy wants to do.
This really is part of the fallout of the massive power shift in the Republican Party that happened about a year ago at the convention. You look at the previous state chair elections, Raul Labrador versus Tom Luna. It's 2 votes. Tom Luna versus Mark Fuller, it's 6 votes, 12 votes, something really small. Dorothy Moon ends up beating Tom Luna last year.
140 votes, right?
Yeah, it was an insane number.
Yeah,
it wasn't even close.
And I think the people who got used to having a lot of power and influence in the party, they're reeling from that. They're not sure what to do. The fact that these grassroots conservatives, or extremists as they would call us, suddenly have all this institutional power,
Totalitarians.
They don't want to know what to do about it, and they're flailing in. They're trying to take every bad thing that happens, blame it on Dorothy Moon and the leadership. They're trying to tar them with everything, and at the same time, I think they're trying to sabotage them in as many ways as they can.
Yeah.
100%.
Well, to the point about the elections, though, I will be curious, because Luna was elected by 2, Dorothy won by, whatever it was, 140. The next one, I think, will be a lot more telling, right? Because you also don't want to discount the establishment won, so they just didn't really show up or really put any effort in because Luna was elected, so they didn't think Dorothy would win, right? Well, they've certainly been mobilized a lot harder now that she is elected, and so if she wins by 100 and something again, or 80, I think by a significant margin, then I would say it's safely in the hands of conservatives at that point. If she only wins by 10, then I would say, okay, it's maybe not as solid as you would want, right? The conservative base is not mobilized as good as it should be. But I think the next election will be a lot more telling.
And I think you're right, Greg. I think you're 100% right. I will say my prediction is she's going to win by a bigger margin next time. And the reason I say that is we continue to see more and more Californians pour into our borders, and most of them are very good Californians, like Brian.
Yeah.
You're from California, right?
Me? No, I'm from Washington.
You're from Washington, that's right. But there are
Brian the left Lenny. Coast, either it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Same difference.
Brian Lenny, Brian Lenny is better than 98% of our state officials. He's been here for 10 years. He's from California. Don't care because he's a good person and good conservative. And he also said hi here, so I want to give him a shout out. But more and more conservatives are pouring into Kootenai County, to Meridian, although Meridian's a little squishy. I think this, you're right. The next thing will be telling, but I think it's pretty much locked down. I really do. I don't see a way that the establishment people have to run to the left of our people, of the people on our side of the fence. I don't see the math. I don't see how that works. I think it's a done deal for the next little while. The question is, does the establishment realize that?
Well, I don't think they do. I think you mentioned earlier that they go to the pages of left-wing media to trash other Republicans, and that's never a good look. And that's really what I went after Daniel Silver, the first vice chair, for. He went to the pages of the Idaho Press to talk about how awful the tactics of these radical extremist Republicans are.
Yeah.
That wasn't his exact words, but it's like whenever a national Republican figure goes into the New York Times to talk about how awful other Republicans are, it gets you pats on the head from the left, but it doesn't do any good for your own movement.
I want to. Maria Nate is watching. We'll have Maria on soon too. Hi, Maria. Maria has turned into just a fireball. I love it.
She's always been a fireball. She's a lot more publicly visible fireball.
I thought she was a little bit more docile than she is now. But I love Maria 2.0. I'm not saying that the establishment isn't coming for us. I understand that. In fact, I think that the next 2 primary elections are going to be absolute bloodbaths. Like, it's going to be like there's going to be blood in the streets. And I don't mean that actual blood for any reporter who's watching. I don't mean that.
Reporter, what I do mean is it's Southern activist. Yeah.
There are going to be lawsuits flying all over the place. There's going to be people protesting. There's going to be like hundreds of thousands of dollars per seat. Lies like you have never. I understand what's coming. But what I mean is conservatives know what's coming. Like, Brent Regan has the KCRCC game on point, and he's replicating that all across the state. He is the mastermind of what's coming, and I don't think that we're going to come back. And I don't think the establishment has a formula to answer what is happening. I think they're just pissed, and I think they're flailing, and I think they're, like you said, Brian, they are the only solution they have now is to make fake Twitter accounts and make fun of us and talk to their friends in the media.
Lawsuits
and
are a
lawsuits.
new
I think
thing.
that's all they've got at this point, and they're just going to flail. And Tracy Wasden's going to keep crying, and we're going to keep winning. And I don't care. I'm under no illusion the establishment is going to stand down. They're not, but I think we're going to win. I really do. So I just need to get that off my chest. Get off my soapbox now.
There was a lot of other good stuff that happened. To narrow it down to a third item. They passed resolutions condemning the U.S. involvement in Syria and Yemen. They passed a resolution, that was a vote of no confidence in the governor and the 14 legislators who refused to override the governor's veto on the Children's School and Library Protection Act. There was a condemnation of the FBI saying if we can't reform it, it needs to be abolished. And then there were a bunch of new rules. And I really want to focus on one of the rules because this is where you get to a little bit of inside baseball. The resolutions are great. They make big statements. They get on national news because they say, oh, look what the Idaho GOP is saying. But the rules are where you actually lay the groundwork for the next elections. And one of the rules that they passed, was basically because of Ada County, I think. And that had to do with proxy votes. So, like last year, someone in the party determined that, oh, you know what? State party rules say you can use proxy votes, even though Robert's rules, which we use for our meetings, doesn't actually say anything about it. And so people started using proxy votes. Ada County has almost 200 precinct committee men slots. They're not all full. Most of them are. But we never get that many people at our monthly meetings. So instead, people sign over their proxy vote to another member, and that member can cast votes on behalf of the absent PC.
It's like ballot harvesting, GOP style.
Exactly. That is the exact analogy I made, because we would watch various figures, some might call them the establishment figures, walk into the meeting holding stacks of proxies that they'd gone out and collected for people who didn't even bother coming to the meeting. And it basically is ballot harvesting. It's no different than a Democrat Party activist going to a nursing home and getting a stack of ballots to toss into the mailbox. And so that was allowing the leadership of Ada County to basically hold their way because they managed to have enough proxy votes that they prevented any serious changes. And so this new rule says that if you're a county that has alternate PCs, which Ada does, you can't use proxies. And that makes perfect sense because the whole point of an alternate PC is that if you can't make the meeting, someone else can. Being a PC is more than just showing up at the reorg meeting, voting for the chairman, and then never showing up again. You're supposed to be there every month as business gets done. You're supposed to be engaged, knocking on doors in your neighborhoods, getting to know your neighbors, getting people activated. It's not about just signing up and then signing over a proxy.
Yeah.
I think that's going to result in some changes here going forward. Like you said, Brent Regan and the KCRCC, they are setting the standard for what a Republican committee can do to get involved and push things in a more conservative direction. And I think you're going to start seeing that happen elsewhere as well.
Is that replicated in Bonneville? I know Bonneville, the up in Kootenai and down in Bonneville, those are the two that the establishment really hate. They're always attacking
Canyon
them
now, right?
Yeah, and Canyon's getting there.
Third.
So how does Bonneville, I guess, compare to maybe Kootenai?
Well, Bonneville is really engaged as well. I mean, it was Bonneville that got sued by Tom Luna last year because they were recommending candidates in the primary that Tom Luna's rich friend didn't like. That was one of the big reasons that he lost that election. People were showing up to the convention saying, Tom Luna sued me. Is he going to sue you next?
I remember those T-shirts. Those were amazing.
So there really is a divide. There's some folks in the party who think that the PCs, the committees, should just be completely hands off when it comes to the primary. We shouldn't be involved at all. Just let the voters decide. And then there are others who say, wait a second, we've got people who are basically Democrats registering as Republicans. I mean, Jeff Schroeder out in District 8 is probably the biggest example of that. There's nothing Republican about that man, but he went in there and you took advantage of voter ignorance to run and pretend to be a conservative. And now he's casting all these awful votes. And this is where you get PCs who are engaged. They're people kind of like me who are engaged in the political process. They enjoy, being a part of it, going in there and saying, oh, wait a second, you say you're a conservative, but you said this, you said that, you said this, you refused to sign on to the Republican Party platform, and it's not like, I don't think precinct committeemen and their committees should have the right to keep them off the ballot, but they should have the ability to go out and explain to voters, look, this is who they are. This is some more information for you as you make your decision.
Yeah.
It's interesting because it's nothing more than basically looking at a resume. I mean, we as voters are hiring people, right? We are hiring people to work for us. And if we have an idea, we have a job listing, what we want them to do, we need to understand, can they do the job? And it's weird because there are a lot of people, I think it's mainly the people who don't want to do the job, who don't want to live the platform, who don't want to be bound by any sort of rules. They just want to go and have their power. They're the ones who are saying, well, you can't ask me if I'm going to do the job. That's extremist. That's, you hate women and you hate puppies and you hate young people. Like, it's the same thing. Like,
yeah,
I hire a window washer to wash my windows. I want to know if he's good at washing windows and if he'll do what he says he's going to do. Like, it's the same damn thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Okay. I guess that point just didn't need to be talked about. Whatever. Fine.
I was letting Brian take that one. Then his kids probably ran off to the side, and he was like, "Squirrel." So.
I thought I heard a baby crying, but I've got someone here to take care of those things.
There. You misogynist, you.
What the hell did you just say?
Right before we went live here, I published a new article on Substack, gemstate.substack.com, by the way, talking about winning versus playing nice. And you see some of the rhetoric coming from the, I'm going to start calling them the old establishment, because they're not really the establishment anymore, because we're creating a new establishment. But anyway, so the old establishment, they when they can't argue on the ideas, they can't come out and say, have a debate on Second Amendment rights or abortion or anything like that. So they come out and they just attack us as extremists. And like Dan Silver did in his editorial, he attacks the tactics, saying, well, I agree with you on the principles, but I don't like the way you're going about it. It reminds me of something I heard way too often from an ex-girlfriend. It's not what you said, it's how you said it. And
Ex being the key word there, ex-girlfriend.
Yeah. So they So they're attacking tactics. It's almost like they really don't want to win. And obviously, I think they'd like to see the Republicans get wiped out in the next election, because then they could say, look, Dorothy Moon and her tactics, they caused you to lose. But I think they even more than that, they fear that they win, because then it validates this new conservatism, this new way of doing things that is not so they're not pulling their punches anymore.
I was actually just pulling this up to read as Scott and Greg were boring me with gun stuff, but I just didn't get there. I want to push back for just a second, because again, this is me not having read it, but I understand that there's a strain within conservative politics that says we need to be like Trump. We need to bully, we need to harass, we need to not harass in the like let's not sexually harass people, whatever. But there's a let's push our way to victory, which is great. There was a tactic that I saw at the Republican meetings last year where some people on our side of the fence, and I know who did it, I'm not going to out them because they can do it themselves. They sent homeless people to Tom Luna's big money soiree, which is like whatever, like have your soiree or whatever. But they sent homeless people and said, hey, there's free pizza out there, and ended up making my brother look like a hero because he got them free pizza or whatever. But like, my question for you, Brian, is there a line? Because I thought that was despicable. And there are people in my tribe who think I'm an idiot because I don't like using homeless people as political pawns. Is there a line on what we can and can't do to achieve that victory? And where is that line? And who is determining where that line is?
I would say, yeah, there has to be a line somewhere, obviously. I mean, we're not going to descend into, some sort of third world country where we're, assassinating leaders and stuff. That's way beyond the line. So
we're almost there, by the way. We're almost there.
It sure feels like it. Yeah.
Problem. Like the homeless pizza prank, I thought it was, pretty dumb. And the thing about that, though, is that it didn't gain you anything. It didn't anything. In fact, it put Dorothy Moon on the defense to, disavow.
Yeah.
And so that's not a tactic that was useful. Whereas some of the things that Silver in his editorial complained about was like the committees, the legislative district committees and county committees censuring their lawmakers because of, a series of votes, like when Canyon County censured Julie Yamamoto out in whichever district that is, 10 or 11.
The name that could not be mentioned last week. Yeah. Yeah, Julie Yamamoto, District 11, I think. She's District 11 now.
So, I think there is still a wide gulf there between, using homeless people as pawns for a silly prank that's not going to accomplish anything, and using the ability of central committees to, deliver a rebuke to their lawmakers. That is perfectly acceptable, I think, as is, getting out there and, telling it like it is. And, there's this sense, and this is really what I talk about in the piece, that I think there's a sense, especially among older Republicans, that, we just want to go back to the days when we could all get along. Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill, they were friends off the clock, and, so they could have their disagreements and then, go back and, because they're all Americans. Well, even the very idea of what it is to be an American now is, we don't agree. The idea of what it means to be a man or a woman, we don't agree with the other side. We have very little in common. So what does it gain us to pretend that we're still pretty much on the same page because we're all Americans, and we shouldn't tell it like it is. I mean, it's like Maria Nate. She's on Twitter telling it like it is. She's telling, the groomers and the perverts and the weirdos exactly, what they are and what they're doing and why we're opposing them. And a lot of people would say, oh, that's mean. That's not being very, very winsome.
Yeah. And go ahead, Dustin.
So I was gonna, for you, Greg, you and I have been targets of these sort of arguments, which is, Greg, Dustin, your ads are too mean. Yeah, your ads are too mean. Have you faced that, right? What was your reaction like? How many times have you heard that?
Well, 8 or 9 years now. When we started, we shifted our tactics, and we can call it confrontational politics, right? There's literally a book called Confrontational Politics.
That's going to end up in a lawsuit somewhere, so please don't say that.
No, I'm sure it is. So, but I mean, the whole premise of the book, it's like 100 pages. I still tell everybody to read it. It's not confrontation in like what the left does, where you're out violently attacking people. None of that is in the book. That's not what the guy's talking about. What he's saying is, it's okay to be a Christian and go up to your elected official and say, hey, you said you were going to defend the Second Amendment and you didn't do anything. Like the Supreme Court just screwed us over and you did nothing. Now I'm going to come and I'm going to campaign against you. Okay. You're confronting, like you said, Brian, you're holding them accountable. You're saying to that elected official, you did that big promise you made on the campaign trail. You broke it. Okay. Now I'm coming for you. Now I'm going to expose exactly who you are and what you've done, Jeff Schroeder or any of these other Democrats that have ours next to their name. And so Dustin's right. We just started running like hard hitting ads, exposing these people for who they were. And they didn't like it. They came out of that little bubble of like, oh, we're all here to get along. We'll compromise with these evil people and and we're like, no, we're done. Like those days are over. And so, for years and years and years now, we've been attacked and maligned and everything else, but we don't go sue people because we're not a bunch of pansies. So.
It's amazing how I do think that Idaho was immune from traditional contemporary political culture for a long time. And it was wrong, right? I think normal politics is, dude, it's just a fist fight. And Idaho for a long time, in the era of like the Brent Hill era, the pre-us, honestly, it's a pre-us era, if I'm being honest. Like
pretty much.
It was there, it was congenial, and people could have those disagreements, but it wasn't all that conservative. I mean, evidenced by Brent Hill being in power because he wasn't conservative. But you never saw progress. And the other thing that Brian's a part of now is the accountability was never there because there was nobody measuring it. And now because you have the Idaho Freedom Index, the CAI pledge, and a few other scorecards, you can see who's actually conservative. But then you and me and IFF and other groups actually animated those scorecards. And we said, hey, this is what's true. This is what this person's saying. They're not the same. And I think people get hung up on that, which is all we're saying is, and we're saying it to catch your attention, you have to use those tactics. All we're saying is this person's lying to you and they're not following what they said they were going to follow. And that's all of it.
Yeah.
That's all it is. That's what the index is, right, Brian?
Yeah, exactly. People have a misconception about the Freedom Index that we're going out there and we're rating lawmakers. That's actually not how it's done. The IFF policy staff goes out and rates the bills, the legislation, and then as lawmakers vote for the bill or against the bill, that creates a rating. And it's just a reflection of how they vote. It's, if you go to IACI's website, and they rate lawmakers too. And it's usually about the opposite of what the Freedom Foundation's ratings are. But their metrics are just, did he vote for a bill that we support, or did he vote against a bill that we support? And that's basically it. There's no transparency. It's just what's in the best interest of IACI. Whereas the Freedom Foundation, we publish the metrics to say, does it grow government? Does it shrink government? Does it take over a job of the private sector, or does it, retreat from the private sector? Does it raise taxes, lower taxes, stuff like that. And so you can see how the metric is done. You can see go read the bills, read the analysis of the bills. Our guys are writing hundreds of thousands of words every session. It's pretty amazing. And then, the score that the lawmakers get, they generate themselves by the way they vote. And you get folks like Chuck Winder and Mary Souza who they're upset about that.
Mary.
And
Mary, how she has fallen.
Quite contrary. Yes.
They try to say that, we're not taking in full context or something, or that we're not evaluating what the bill's intentions are. But, intentions don't matter in, legislation. You can intend one thing, like moving the primary to May, but if the legislation doesn't actually say that, then it's not going to happen. So you can't rate a bill based on intentions. You just rate it on the text.
I'm looking forward to 2024 because they all hate scorecards and ratings and stuff. And so I'm glad that they're not going to be using the NRA ratings anymore, because ratings are stupid, right? And so I look forward to Chuck Winder and all of them not using the NRA rating in 2024 because ratings are bad. Just saying.
Yeah. Yep, they will. It's blatant hypocrisy. And the funny thing about, I just want to get back to IFFs for 1 second, because it was a project I worked on obviously for a long time. Best thing about it is they do it in real time ahead of the votes, so that, and everyone's like, oh, well, you're just telling lawmakers how to vote. But think about how it would work the other way. A lot of people have said, well, why don't you do it like the ACU and rate the bills later after the session's done, and then you can give them a score? Okay, but then if we did that, if IFF did that, I can't say we anymore. If IFF did that, you would accuse us of cherry picking bills to help our friends to make them look better. So you can't have it both ways. So doing it in real time and letting lawmakers sort themselves and score themselves is the way to do it. So what's going on with Mary Souza, Brian? You put out an article on Mary Souza. What the hell is going on there? This is just a free ranging talk now. Like, I just want to know what's going on in Idaho politics, and Mary Souza is obsessed.
The thing about Mary Souza is as I wrote in my piece responding to her editorial, I had never heard of her until I heard her, Dorothy Moon, and Phil McGrain speak during the Secretary of State primary campaign last year, and I heard them one after another, and I thought she was fine. I had nothing against her. And then suddenly a year ago, she comes out with this really nasty letter to all the attendees of the convention saying how awful Dorothy Moon is. But really, it just made me think, how awful is Mary Souza? She's saying some really awful stuff here. And after that, it's like she's got some sort of axe to grind, and she's gone after everybody she can see. She's gone after Brent Regan and the KCRCC. She's gone after Idaho Freedom Foundation and, everybody who has worked there by name, and anybody who's anywhere associated with any of those groups. And it's, I don't quite understand why, but, and I've been trying to ignore her up until this point, but, with the editorial right before the summer meeting, I felt it deserved just to be, explained how she was literally making stuff up. She was taking these proposed rules and completely misconstruing them. But if you're only reading her columns, you're not going to know that she's doing that. So I felt somebody should.
She's number 50 or 51. I don't know how many she's done now. It's hard to keep track.
I think it's 500. My theory is, I honestly think she's auditioning for something, and I don't know what, but I think there's a job out there that she wants, whether it's appointed by the governor or hired by some special interest group or whatever. And I think she's auditioning. That's all it is. That's my theory, and I want to see if that plays out. But it's been fascinating because there was one that was personally offensive to me because she attacked Fred Birnbaum's integrity. Fred Birnbaum I have zero integrity, none. Most of the people in politics have zero. Fred Birnbaum has all of it that we don't have. He has, and she just absolutely viciously. If I were him, I would have sued, but I don't think it was a strong enough case, and I'm also sure that Fred's not a baby. But it's disgusting what she's doing. Okay, we got to wrap up because I think your baby's crying, and the person, your wife, probably wants a break. Where's the party headed from here, Brian?
I think it's headed in a good direction. Like you said, the establishment is going to strike back. Maria and Nate in the chat mentioned that it's not just legislation. They're going to go after PC races because that's how you take over a political party from the ground up, and they know this, and they will they're going to try and retake the precinct committee man positions, retake the legislative districts and the county committees. But I think our side, the conservative side, is also really fired up as well, and I think the momentum is on our side. We've seen what we can do with conservative leadership, and that's always the test because they'll like to say that, okay, yeah, you make a big deal of your ideology and how you support the platform, but you don't know how to raise money. You don't know how to organize. And people are proving them wrong everywhere. I think Dorothy Moon's doing a great job. I think over in Canyon County, they're doing a fantastic job. Somehow they're keeping that thing going without Tracy Wasden. And it's in a small way, it's the same thing up in Priest River where Brandon Durst is taking over as superintendent. The proof will be in the pudding. Can somebody implement conservative policies and make it work? And I think we're seeing that at the party level that it's working. We're seeing that in the Attorney General's office, that having a real conservative fighter makes a difference. And hopefully we'll have a chance to see it in the legislature and in other state government offices in the next couple of years.
I think Matt is the one that's got the comment down there.
Yeah.
I do think that I know people like Tyler, my brother, who is, I don't even know if he's establishment anymore. I think he's full on either independent or socialist Democrat at this point. I do think they're going to continue their anti-Moon campaign. They hate her, and her fundraising may not be what Tom Luna's was, but she's not in the pocket of big corporations, so that's okay. I think that if they lose a seat, if we lose a seat or two in the general election next year, they're going to call for her head. But maybe we needed to lose some people like a Dustin Manwaring, for example. I think whatever. I don't even know party politics well enough to know what they could cook up to dethrone her, but they'll come up with something. I think that's coming. It's unfortunate. So.
Yeah, Matthew was having some technical difficulties. We kept trying to bring him in. His orange jacket probably got caught in the mic, and it just went downhill from there. So we'll have you on another time, Matthew. Hopefully, when we get the stuff fixed up. But
Brian, before we let you go, first of all, thank you for coming on. Congratulations on Donald Trump Almon. That's a weird name for a baby. Still think it is, but you can still change it. You can tell the folks again where they can find your writings, because I found a lot of value in following your work.
Well, thank you, Dustin and Greg, for having me on. It's exciting. I like what you're doing with this podcast, and I hope it only continues to grow going into the 2024 primary. You can find my personal stuff over at gemstate.substack.com. I've been writing there for about a year and a half. And in fact, it's opened to so many doors because it's giving me a reason to be involved, giving me a reason to talk to the people who are, the movers and shakers. And of course, you can go to idahofreedom.org to find, the work of the whole team over at Idaho Freedom Foundation. I've been really blessed to be working in the room with so many smart people. I've learned so much about the legislature and legislation and Idaho politics just sitting in that room.
Yeah. You were a great hire. I worked with you for a couple of weeks. Great hire. I'm anxious to see and excited to see what you do at IFF. So thanks for coming on the podcast tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it. All right.
Greg, can I tell everybody about what I'm working on before we close out?
Yeah. I don't even know what you're working on.
I don't even know if you know this. I did tell you about this. I want to tell everybody about this before we close the show.
Oh, and yeah, I know what you're talking about now.
I know what you're all going to say. You're all going to say another messaging platform. Okay, I'm like a boomer almost, and like I don't love new technologies. I was really late to like Signal and like Telegram. I still don't get. Discord is baller. I am building a Discord for Idaho politics, and what Discord is basically it's a bunch of chat rooms, one place, and you can control permissions so that people only have limited access to certain rooms. So what that means is. Yes, Maria, stop. You stop right now.
I'm gonna pin that comment.
What that means is I'll have it ready by next week, and I'll share the link here. But basically, what you can do is you sign in, you create your user ID or whatever, you get in the room, and you say, "Hey, I'm a conservative," and that puts you in a room with conservatives only. And we'll get to why that matters in just a second. And then you say, "I'm in Legislative District 1." Boom, right into Legislative District 1 room. So you can talk about your local politics with your fellow conservatives. Now, you would say, well, Dustin, what if I only like they're spies? That's the beauty of it. There's a verification system so that there's a special room for people who are verified, who I know and who have seen and can vouch for their politics so that they can have I hate to use the term safe space, but a conservative only space. So we're going to try it out, and it may fail, but I think that there's room for, shut up, Maria, shut up. I don't know because I'm not old enough to be AOL life. Gosh. Like go clean your dentures. Okay. Go clean your dentures.
Oh boy. Shots fired. Wow.
She's taking shots at me in the comments. Anyway, it's going to be fun, and it may fail. It absolutely may fail, but I've been wanting district specific chat rooms for a long time so that people could so that people could.
We're trying to close out, Maria. Come on.
So that people can. I can't even do it. Just know that Discord's going to be baller, and we'd love to see you on there and try it out. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and we'll close it out and be done with it. But I think it's going to work because all politics is local, and we want to be able to give people a place to coordinate, to have discussions. We're going to have rooms for the presidential discussions or the presidential debates and stuff like that. It's going to be a lot of fun. So I will have that ready for you next week. And if you hate it, let me know. But it's going to be a lot of fun. And Maria's not invited. So
oh gosh.
I hate everyone.
I don't get to cue up the dial tones. Oh my gosh. Hey, I'm still old enough to know what that is. So,
dude, right? Napster, days of Napster and LimeWire.
Here's the interesting thing, I guess, in just closing out on the whole social media front is it's changed so much, man. It used to be a lot more fun. It was a lot easier to do, and then Donald Trump got elected and really screwed it all up. Not him, but they were like, "Oh crap, we really got to start clamping down on this," right? So by 2020, Facebook was essentially useless. Twitter was obviously useless, and there's no good alternatives. There's yet to be not Rumble, sorry. Parler got bought in like April, and then they shut it down permanently. That's gone. Then there's like 5,000 other alternatives, and none of them have caught on. And that's, I think, really frustrating for conservatives and organizations. Is there's not really a good place to go right now to try and do this stuff. And to talk about everything. I'm pushing Rumble pretty hard for the ISA right now because that one is catching, right? But it's a video platform. So it's a little bit more difficult there. But Rumble is the only one that has ever caught on that's a good alternative.
I think if I'm not mistaken, somebody in the military got in trouble because Discord was secure enough for them to share leaked documents. So
was that from that?
It was from Discord.
Yep. Oh, wow.
Yeah. Okay. So that's why I'm like, oh, that's interesting. That's really, really interesting. So, and I think the big thing for me is that it's you can set up the verifications, the authorizations. It's a lot of work for the administrator, but it's worth it because then it benefits the user. So I do think you're right that there's no good answer right now because I think Twitter's getting better. I don't think Elon has all the kinks worked out yet.
Yeah.
But other than Twitter, there's like nothing. So I think Discord might actually be it. I really do.
Sure. Yeah.
So anyway, that's the show tonight.
Holy cow. That was fun.
That was a good one.
A good time. Yeah. I'm glad to be back. It was good. If for anything else, I had to have our stinger. I need to hear that once a week at the very least. So cool.
We will try to have, I'm working on a candidate for next week. Follow us on social media. Keep Idaho free on Facebook and Twitter. We're going to set up our own Twitter here, but it's just not there yet because I'm lazy. but we're working on a candidate for next week. So
yeah,
should be a good show.
All right, we'll roll the stinger and then we are out. Peace, everybody.